What happens when you're pregnant and your employer becomes dismissive of your performance? What about your supervisor who openly disregards you as an employee because you're pregnant? What should you expect from HR? And how can you protect yourself and your job under such difficult and challenging circumstances? What are your rights? How do you advocate for yourself? How do you protect your career? That's what we're going to cover in today's video. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed. Welcome to the HR Insider. I am an HR leader and legal professional, and on this channel, we talk about issues that matter to you most in the workplace. In today's video, I'm going to break down a case that involves pregnancy discrimination. This one is good because it resulted in a $185 million verdict, and it also points out what your protections are and what you should expect if you encounter something similar. Be sure to stick around until the end because we're going to talk about what lessons you can take away from this case to protect your rights and avoid costly mistakes. So you don't want to miss it. The content shared on this channel is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal advice. So always consult with a qualified attorney or HR professional for specific guidance tailored to your needs. And don't forget to like and subscribe. This case starts with Rosario Juarez. She was a dedicated employee at AutoZone, and she had been there for a number of years, working her way up to become the store manager in their San Diego, California office. Well, in October of 2005, she received a favorable performance review where she met expectations of her position at that time. In early November, 1 month later, she told her supervisor that she was pregnant, and during that meeting, there were other supervisors who were also in attendance. And when the supervisor who she notified of her pregnancy responded, she was absolutely stunned by what he said. She said, first of all, he was visibly upset, and he said to her, "Congratulations, I guess." One of the other district managers also said to her, "I feel sorry for you." And then her district manager that she reported to became really aggressive, very mean, and very critical of her work. Suddenly, she said nothing she did was right, and everything that he gave her to do had to be redone, even though there was no need for it to be redone. And before knowing of her pregnancy, he had provided her with very short fix it lists for her store. But after she notified him of her pregnancy, the list became several pages long, as many as 70 small or minor items that she was provided to fix. And she said he also yelled at her all the time and publicly humiliated her. And as I was reading through this case, I just thought, my goodness, this is happening while this woman is pregnant. I mean, stress can cause you to have difficulty with your pregnancy. So thank goodness that that did not happen. But how insensitive some of the things that she experienced by this district manager. She said that he repeatedly um, made statements in front of other workers and customers that he did not believe that she could perform her job in her condition, and just repeatedly told her to step down, even though she and her team just all the time trying to, even off the clock, to fix things, try to make things perfect. It None of it was good enough, and he eventually put her on a performance improvement plan, and that resulted in her receiving a demotion. And she said that she felt that it was biased because as she was working to reach her sales goals and make sure the store was how it needed to be, she said that her team always hit their sales targets, but that did not matter. She still suffered as a result of performance deficiencies. despite the fact that she was meeting her sales goals. And she did take her complaints, her concerns up the food chain, up to corporate ladder, up to HR, but no action was taken. So she felt eventually she didn't have a choice but to leave the company. And so after she left, she did file a lawsuit alleging gender and pregnancy discrimination. And here was the linchpin for the whole thing. She said, it's not just me. This is something that's ongoing and pervasive inside of AutoZone. She said that it has a culture of bias against women. And she said that people were suffering and were doing so in silence. So the case did go to court. It went in front of a jury trial, and they sided with Juarez. They awarded her $185 million, $872,000 in compensatory damages, and a jaw-dropping $185 million in punitive damages. So the verdict, when a verdict comes out that's this big, it's not about the employee. It's not about Juarez. It's basically trying to send a message to other employers. It's a deterrent that says there are consequences for unfair and biased treatment, and you need to address the discrimination in the workplace if it is happening. One of the key aspects to this case in securing the win for Juarez was the performance evaluations that gave her favorable ratings. It is very difficult for your employer to explain why they terminate you or demote you or do something to you that modifies your job in a negative fashion if they are consistently giving you high performance reviews. So that is a very key takeaway here. If something happens to you after you have filed a complaint or after you have made it known that you're unhappy about something, or you've told about something that's happening in the workplace that's inappropriate or inaccurate, and then you experience a negative either bias towards your job and the work you're doing, or if you receive a negative comment publicly, openly, or your job, you're demoted, those are the kind of things that if it is happening following a complaint leads to a retaliation claim that would be easy to. Performance reviews are so critical in identifying whether or not an employee is performing their jobs. And if you've consistently received high marks and then all of a sudden you have low marks, especially following the notification of something happening in the workplace that shouldn't be, or your exercise of a federal right. That, in and of itself, can result in a lawsuit that is favorable for an employee. The other thing to take note about is if you have a pregnancy, you are protected under the Americans with Disability Act. You're also protected under the Pregnancy Act. And some states, including California, have their own state laws relevant to protections for women who are pregnant. So there is a lot. Other thing that happened here is that they did not take her complaint seriously. They ignored it. They didn't. I didn't talk about this, but when they went to trial, they said they did an investigation. But when they went to trial, there was no record of any interviews, there was no investigation that had ever been done. They told her once she filed her complaint that they found that there was no bias, no discrimination, that there was nothing that was clear about what had happened to her, and that she basically, you know, it was all in her head. And so, but when they went to trial, there was no evidence that they had done even the slightest of an investigation. So that also hurt them a lot when they went to court to defend themselves against this claim. If you feel like you're being treated unfairly, please document what's happening. I always talk about documentation on this channel because it's so important. And I do think it's important to raise your concerns to HR. If you feel like you're in an environment where HR is not going to do the right thing, I think it's important for you to also plan for a plan B, a plan C. What am I going to do if this happens to me? And I talk about that in one of my videos, when to take things to HR. So if you have an opportunity to review that and consider what your options are, I would encourage you to go and watch that. But please know your rights, especially when it comes to pregnancy and gender discrimination, because they are against the law. And there are penalties that an employer is going to suffer if they are practicing discrimination in the workplace. What are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the HR Insider for more insights and stories from the workplace. I'll see you in the next video.